Hello and welcome back to another Demis Hellen tutorial. We're going to talk about macro controls, mod wheel control. I get a lot of questions asking why do you bother using these when we can just automate the parameter directly. So for example, this sound that we have here has one parameter controlling the movement of this filter here. So there's no automation, it's just using this LFO here at this speed over 4 bars. But let's say that we want to turn this off, so we don't want it to affect anything on here and we want to do that manually. We can do by clicking on the filter and dragging the filter around and moving its position. But what's going to happen there is if you do that, you're going to have a lot of fiddly automation. So let's just jump into our automation lane. We're going to use this volume just for now. It doesn't matter what it is. And let's say that you're going in and you find the sweet spot for your filter is here. And you create an automation lane like this, and then you bring it back down. So the first thing you've got to do, especially in Cubase, you've got to make sure that that is in the same position as it was before. And there's a couple of ways that we can do this. We can just jump back, create a reference point, and then we can create our automation in between, and it'll always return to those points. But for me, that's a lot of faffing around when you want to automate that parameter and get it back to the same point every time. And what we're going to look at is disabling LFO2 for now. So now this is not automating anything, it's connected to nothing and the filter won't move. Apart from using the envelopes obviously here on the LFO1. The filter position is not changing. And what we can do is use macros to keep the position of the filter every time you return that macro to 0. So if we click and drag this down here, you can see it's going to attach macro 1 and it's going to fill the void from the position of the filter to fully open. And we don't want to do that in every case, so let's have a listen to how that sounds. Let's say we want it to go to here, we can actually just make adjustments here. And you can see the green line on the filter down below. So let's just say to here for a second. Let's say that's our position that we want, and we're going to label this filter posi for position. And now we have a start and end point every time. It's identical every time. And all we have to do is automate that one parameter. And we don't have to worry about the automation points that I've just shown you and getting them lined up. It saves time and it's great for workflow. Now, the obvious other factor for macros and the mod wheel support is the fact that you can control multiple parameters. So again, looking at the automation lanes here on screen, if we just narrow this back down and I create a few more lanes, it doesn't matter what it's picking at the moment. You can see mute, panning, enable output, all that sort of thing. Imagine that you have 6 parameters in there that you want to control and you have to draw the automation in for each one. If you want full control over those parameters like that, then that's absolutely fine, but we're talking about workflow here. We don't want to be messing around too much when we can let a macro do everything, especially if you're buying presets that already have macros, i.e. like mine. And I might as well mention this sound is actually out of the Born to Produce Vital pack that was exclusive to their website, so you can go over there and check that out. I'll leave a link in the description. So we're going to use macro 2, and let's say we want to control the tone of this sound, and we're going to use a few different things to control the tone. So one, let's use a bend mode, for example. So when we move this, you can see it's bending the waveform. Let's see how that sounds if we just drag that onto there. Pick another one. Let's sync, probably going to be a little bit more obvious. Okay, and I'm just going to relabel this tone for now. So that might be too much, but we can come back to it. And what we can do is say, let's move the hard clip, for example, and we've already got a pre-filter on there. So let's move the cutoff. We're just moving it a smidge, not too much, just enough to help change the tone with that. So let's put some compression on here, and we're going to use a single band for now, and let's have a fast release. Let's just get some sound testing done. I'm just going to bring down the level as well. Okay, so that's controlling the tone there. So for now, I'm going to turn the mix down to 0 and attach macro 2 to the mix of that. Let's bring it down a little bit. So now we can go back to this sync. You can see now there's a volume difference, and that's because we've increased some compression, which naturally brings the level up. So what we can do is we can actually have a portion of this already on, bring the level down and just increase it a little bit. And if you're worried about the levels getting a bit too high, there is no level adjustment on here apart from the high section and the low section. You could automate both of those if you wanted to, or we can jump back in and automate the level, but we're already doing that with LFO1 because it's actually a sequence. So what can we do? We can jump into the matrix and we can select down here that macro 2 is going to control a global control. And then in this list, we can see volume down here. Double click that and we can see volume is added into the mix, and when this is turned up it's getting louder, so we can say when the macro is open, drop the volume by, let's just say 0.2. So you can hear that's too much. And there we are, just a few points and we've balanced out the volume using the global control. So there's a lot of power that can be withheld in these macros, and that's just 4 points. And from that you can see these macros are super useful when it comes to controlling parameters and making sure that everything returns to its original setting, its original position, without actually automating it using bumbly automation lines on your DAW. So again, if any of you skipped to this point in the video, I did mention before, there's no problem controlling automation using the automation lanes and using the parameters individually, because you're going to get more precise control. But we're talking about workflow and using these macros to improve your workflow and just get quickly to a result. So let's use another common one. We might as well fill the 2 final macros here. Another common one is a high pass effect. So we're going to use macro 3. And you can see we've already got a high pass happening here. So macro 3, sorry. Let's use the position of that. You can see that's a simple high pass, but what we're going to do is increase the reverb mix as well. So let's go down here and increase the mix to full. Oh, that is a little bit too much there, so I'm going to bring that down so it doesn't quite reach the sort of silent portion. We'll call this high pass effects, and just simply having that high pass in that very limited, simple form gives you enough for a transition in your music. Finally, I want to show you another useful tip that we can have. So you can see this LFO here is controlling the oscillator 1 level, and then it's controlling 2 filters. So these 2 filters and the level here. So if we wanted to have this sound as just a straightforward acid, we can just use macro 4 and drag them on top like this, onto each one, and each parameter now cannot be activated until macro 1 is turned up, and it's going to increase those by the values to the final value level that they have on there. What we could have here, you can see the level is around the 0.007 there, and I'm going to return it back to where it is, like so. And then I'm going to use macro 4 to actually turn this down to that sort of position. It was roughly there. Never has to be precise. Then we've used a macro to create a transition, and that's a very simple transition as well. We can make a lot more complex transitions, and you can see that in my Vital Cinematic Sequences pack, for example. There's a lot of control over how the sound moves, the speed, the pace. There's all sorts that you can do there to transition that sound. So I'm going to call that FLT for filter and depth, just because there's not enough room to put filter. And for me, that is one of the most essential ones in my sort of production, because I like to have the option to fade out the filter in and just have a little bit more control over the levels of that. So it might sound a bit too harsh there. You might want it there, so it's just a little bit more subtle, or you might want more bite in it. It's entirely up to you, and you've got that option with the macros. Then finally, we do have the mod wheel. We have one extra one, and we can use that just to simply open up the filter, to add some vibrato, to add another oscillator level in if you wanted another sound within that layered on top. Usually I do go for the filter. That is sort of the key go, but we've used that up here. So for the mod wheel, I think what we can do, but for the mod wheel today, I think what we'll do to finish this video is look in the matrix again, and I'm going to show you something else that we can do in here. So I'm going to select mod wheel from in here. So you can see mod wheel is selected. And then what we can do is we can jump into the list of options and we can select mod matrix here. You can see we have modulation amount and power, but for each modulation slot, and I think there is 64 if I am right, there is 64 slots. So the power and amount. We're going to focus on the amount today. If you want to understand the other ones, we can look at that in a future video, or you can look on the Vital Audio forum. And what we can do from here is click on here and choose the mod matrix, and we can control a parameter that we've already assigned in the matrix, i.e. all of the macros that we've set up. So there's not really any call for changing the parameters of these, but I'm just going to show you how we can turn off, say, macro 4, which is the filter depth. So we can stop that working by increasing the amount on the mod wheel. And what we can do is control a modulation parameter. So here on the mod matrix, we can control the amount and power of each modulation slot here. So you can see they're all numbered. They're all rearranged based on what we're currently working on, but we can choose up to 64 slots. So I'm going to click the line so we don't assign anything to this lane just yet. And what we'll do with this to demonstrate is stop the ability of macro 1 operating, so the filter position. So at the moment the sound is able to move with that filter position. And let's say we want to turn that off. So instead of choosing out of here what we want to do, we can actually just click and drag the mod wheel here. And you can see it's going to assign their modulation 3 amount. You can see the lane highlighted on screen. And now, for just a second, let's play this. And then turn this mod wheel off. Here, the filter position now won't move. It won't affect the sound until we say, go on, mix it in. Full amount. And that brings us to the end of the video. Hopefully that opens up some doors and ideas to why you would use macros. Macros really for me are to control the timbre of the sound, to add some transition effects, control the filter depth, so you have all these controls over the parameters that make that sound. And secondly, that also covers the workflow aspect. It keeps you in the production rather than sitting there drawing automation or recording automation using the dials on your MIDI devices. And with that said, if you have any questions about what you've seen in today's video, let me know down in the comments. And if you did enjoy the video and you're not subscribed yet, it'd be a great time to hit that subscribe button so that you won't miss videos that I upload in the future. So thank you very much for watching. I'll see you all in the next video.